Hey guys, welcome back to Aquaria. This is going to be the second half of my review of the game. Last time I talked about the gameplay as much as I could without giving away too many plot details, only briefly touching on the story and the protagonist Nyjah. As such, there's a few little things I left out that I still want to talk about, so that's what I'll be focusing on this time. I urged people at the end of the first part to buy this game, which isn't something I do often, and that's another reason I split this video in two. I'm kind of making a gamble and hoping that at least a few of you who watched the first part will have played Aquaria by the time I release this video. If not, well, I tried. So yeah, warning, this video will contain massive spoilers for this 1 in a million kind of experience. If you want to have your experience be anywhere close to on the level that mine was, stop watching here and go play it, please. If you're really not interested in this game though, and you're just here because you like my videos or something like that, well, I hope you enjoy this one. It'll probably be one of my most insightful videos to date. So if you've watched part 1, it shouldn't surprise you now that I love basically everything about this game. That said, I didn't tell you about everything. This is that rare sort of game that constantly toyed with my expectations all the way from beginning to end. I can't exactly say it's all over the place. More like it goes to a bunch of different places altogether and never looks back. A lot of high concept stuff, you know? The opening cutscene alone was enough to throw me off, as you see some child in a sky fortress fall to his apparent doom. I ask myself, did I boot up the wrong game by mistake? Then Nyjah appears in a vision saying she's going to share her memories of her adventure with you. At first I thought she was communicating with a kid, but nope, she's actually talking to someone else. And don't just go saying it's us, you'll see. The Song Cave, the first real level in the game, is where you sort of get a sense that something about this world is off. One of my favorite artistic choices was giving Aquaria an actual written language. Like, these carvings on the walls aren't gibberish, there's a fully fleshed out alphabet you can use to translate the text written all over Aquaria. Stuff like, I have angered the creator, or Krill will pay! It gets really creepy the further you go, like, the transformation is almost done. We believed in reason, and the pain is becoming unbearable. The creepiest message for me, hands down, has gotta be, feast on the flesh of your own children. Like, holy crap! But hey, given how huge this game is, I'm sure I've missed something else that's even darker than that. I'm gonna read just a few more of these before moving on to give you a sense of how bleak this game really is. Does absolution lie above the waves? Within lie my final thoughts. As he creates, so will he destroy. Fear the Lord, and last but not least, kill me and kill our creator. Are you intrigued? It's a lot like the Matoran alphabet, only the letters look more alien and aren't so clearly based on the letters we use. I also like how they flipped the roles of dots and spaces. Now, dots are used to separate words and spaces are used to separate sentences, though 3 dots together at the end of a sentence can still be used as ellipses. As dark as this game is, it does have a cheeky if underplayed sense of humor. Like, look at these mermogs, they're like weird reverse mermaids. The first moment that really grabbed my attention once I started playing and got me thinking about bigger things was an instance in the Song Cave where, if you swim near the statue, you'll hear some otherworldly chuckling. I could be wrong, but I think it also happens every time you revisit the spot. Creepy. Then I started hearing the same thing in other places too, with similar monuments emitting these noises. So yeah, I could see there were some dark forces connected to these monuments. I could observe my progress through their eyes as I passed them by. Okay, so that's obvious enough. What's really strange though, there are also a few instances where you'll hear another voice mocking you, and in these cases, it's an even more mysterious woman's voice. So just like that, I was back to square one and had no idea what to expect. I thought I did when I made it to Nyjah's hometown, the then mostly abandoned Mythalis city. I say mostly because there are still some members of her species living here, but they've been hideously mutated, transformed in a way that reflects a similar state of their deity. Then things got really freaky. Some areas of the town's cathedral were infested with huge fleshy growths. A little further in and there's layers of muscle fibers and pulsating cysts everywhere. So then I thought, okay, so these creatures accidentally summoned some Lovecraftian horror to this dimension and is gushing out, or maybe even some alien infestation that's taking over, like the Flood or the Thing. But no, it's not even that. By the end of the stage, it feels like a bad dream, as powerful currents pull and flesh you against your will in the literal bowels of the cathedral, where you fight a giant monster at the bottom that turns out to be the god of Mythalis, and it gives you the beast form, making these areas much easier to swim around in. You put him out of his misery, and he urges Nyjah not to give up, saying she'll unite the waters and all that chosen one stuff. With such a nightmarish level appearing this early on, you'd think they wouldn't be able to top it with something else, but they do, just watch. We then find out that the priests of Mythalis were responsible for this mess, sort of. Dabbling in dark magic, they detected another, even greater god that would one day destroy them all. Like they said, as he creates, so will he destroy. After seeing this, they tried to control Mythala, worshipping him in a way that suited their new designs, and it corrupted him into the state he's in when we find him. Okay, I thought, so then these priests must be the bad guys, right? I just have to find them and confront them before they make things even worse, right? Well, you do, but it's a completely optional fight that's over quickly, there's no dialogue, and it's just a way for you to get the spirit form. So the priests are only a tiny part of what's going on. It gets much bigger than anything we've seen so far. Okay, so you've got the creatures like Nyjah and the various races she learns about, like the Crotites and Aurelians. Then you have the respective smaller god of each race. Then you have the father of all these gods, the creator of all of Aquaria, the one who filled an empty ocean with these colorful creatures and their doomed deities. Simply put, God is bored with the world he's created and wants a do-over. He's decided to wipe the slate clean and start again. He's so disappointed with the way things have turned out that he's systematically genociding all of his children's creations so he can populate the world with new ones. So, I guess it's like a child who's bored with their sandcastle knocking it over and starting from scratch. He'll make it bigger and better, and the game only gets crazier from there. Soon enough, you make a break for the surface. Like I said in part 1, these people don't really know what the surface is. Only one other water dwelling race was brave enough to cross over, and for all Nyjah knows, it could be hell up there. Yet in the final maps leading to the surface, I was awash with optimism. I could feel that I was getting closer just from the music changing a few times to get me all excited to see what's up there. It was one of the game's more innocent stretches, and I appreciate it after some of the more hellish stuff I've just been through. This is the emotional roller coaster you're missing out on if you pass up this game. It's not too late to click back and watch the rest of this after playing the game and experiencing its other highs. Eventually I reach the top, and what happens next is epic.
The first taste of air. The warm embrace of the sun.
You know, it's possible to completely ruin this powerful moment. Listen to this old YouTube comment I found. Yoji0 writes, I managed to ruin the moment Nyjah crosses the veil on my first playthrough. I was in beast form from earlier and didn't know the surface was getting closer, so I just flew out of the water, and into a monkey which Nyjah began to devour. That lovely bit with her describing the wind and the sun was ruined by the dumb thing screaming in pain. Wow. I was lucky enough to land on the edge of an island without tripping up horribly. The extreme slowdown can make this scene unintentionally funny, like here. Imagine if I hit that poor bird. Now this is where the gameplay gets even more interesting, as they introduce new out-of-water mechanics. In the water, dashing toward a wall will make you cling to it, sort of like you're hiding from something. To let go, you just press the button again. If you hold the control stick down, she'll launch yourself in that direction, and if you're in a tight space, this can either slow you down or become a cool speedrunning tactic. Once you're out of the water, the dash button becomes a jump button. In these areas, jumping around like a giant frog is all Nyjah can really do, but you have a lot more control over her trajectory than most land-based characters in other games. Enough that someone made a mod inspired by Super Meat Boy called Meaty Mod that takes advantage of this. Simply point the mouse or joystick where you want her to go and she'll jump as far or as high as she can. Wall jumping is also a thing, and it can get a little annoying, but it's not hard by any means. Still, let's not kid ourselves here, this game is at its best when you're underwater, which is 95% of the game, if not more. And they also introduced new underwater mechanics, like spinning around to create a whirlpool to turn a gear and raise or lower the water level. The out-of-water bits are just there to add to the world, and they do. There are really cool places like the Turtle Cave with these floating balls of water you can jump between. I bet this is giving people some pretty vivid Echo the Dolphin flashbacks. It's like something out of a bad dream you haven't had since childhood. It's fun in this game though. As Yoji0 mentioned, there are monkeys on the tiny floating patches of land, and there are other animals like parrots zipping around. Okay, I thought, so this must take place in our world, only it's a really long time ago, and Mythalis is Atlantis, right? My understanding of this game's world was still so limited, until I met Lee. That's right, there are modern humans living in this world. I know, I wasn't expecting that either. So you chase him a little bit until you corner him in a cave where you set up camp. Nyjah, not understanding what the shell on his head is for, feels like taking it off. Still not sure what she's doing, she kisses him, and this gives him the ability to survive underwater. So this is a story about a mermaid who sings magical songs, can transform into a fish, and saves men from drowning by kissing them. Aquaria is a straight up fairy tale, and I love that. We never actually hear Lee speak, but when you bring him to other areas, Nyjah's commentary suggests that he does talk to her sometimes, though this doesn't really make sense to me. If these people are underwater, wouldn't they keep their mouths closed the entire time and communicate by humming like whales do? It's just one of those things I've always found kind of strange in works where characters speak normally underwater. If you've ever shouted at somebody underwater or heard them shout back, you know how weird it sounds. And if someone is breathing underwater with gills and doesn't have air in their lungs, how could they even make the sounds? This is why sharks don't roar. There's nothing there to carry the sound. And yet Nyjah and other characters who speak sound perfectly clear. Maybe I'm overthinking this and it's just telepathy or something. Interestingly enough, these two have met before, when they were kids. It kind of explains why her first instinct was to kiss him when she sees him again. It's because she was happy. I'm as sick of the love at first sight trope as anyone, but I do like the idea of two people meeting, then going a long time without seeing each other, and then they meet again, and they find that they have this weird latent attraction to each other that they can't explain at the time. The game really does feel like one of the better fairy tales. Once you meet Lee, this becomes a completely different game. You can choose to leave him at his cave or Nija's house if you want, or bring him along. By that point, the introduction of Lee seemed so out of left field for me, I didn't know how I should feel about it, but I was more intrigued by the minute. I couldn't help it. Then I thought, oh no, is this going to affect the game's ending? Like, is he going to get maimed or eaten if I bring him along? Turns out you need to bring him with you for at least one stretch of the game, but we'll get to that later. By now I'd seen so many things that were out of this world, I thought anything was possible. So of course, the first thing I did was bring him back to Nija's house and show him around. This is too cute for words. By playing Lee's song, you can zip him to you instantly if you get separated, though it won't work if you've left him back at the house, and when he does tag along, you don't have to worry about him being in any real danger. Yes, it's possible for him to fall into the clutches of an enemy, but he can just blast his way out, and I don't think he even has a health bar. Playing his song while he's present toggles his combat mode, and he'll whip out a laser gun to assist you. It seems like potshots at first, but I began to notice after a while that certain enemies did take a little longer to defeat if I didn't have Lee backing me up with that extra firepower he provides, so he does help, at least to speed the game along. For a while they make it seem like Nija's all alone, like she's the last sane person still alive in this entire world, but things take a happier turn once you meet Lee. Simply seeing him tag along is kinda precious. Don't think for a second that this is where the game starts losing its edge though. There are still plenty of genuinely creepy moments like that felt like the longest second and a half of my life on my first playthrough. This thing came out of nowhere, and I was sitting pretty close to a big screen at the time. It just sat there with a giant eyeball that looks a little too real staring me in the face. Jeez. Then, with Lee's help, I came upon the Sunken City, these old-timey human ruins that sorta reminded me of the first cutscene. Turns out Lee recognizes them too. You find lots of ghosts in this area, and the game's whole gimmick of playing songs becomes extremely important at this point in the game. However, this is another one of those areas that I came to a lot sooner than I was supposed to. I didn't have the spirit form yet, and I ended up being cut off from a collectible forever because of that. So you can imagine my shock when I defeated the boss and Lee gets taken away, and I've only defeated like half of the bosses in the game. Now I was worried I'd really messed up. I didn't know how the rest of the game was going to play out. Still, I kept going, clearing things out as I went. Here's that collectible, by the way. These voices make it sound so important. Like I'm just imagining Nija being like, "Ooh, what's this do?" And Lee's like, "Oh, it carries boulders." Remember that one area that was out of the way I mentioned in part 1? I figured I'd show it off now. I really like this place. There aren't many dangers here, and there's lots of friendly mammals that you don't see anywhere else in the game, like otters and dolphins, and they're so cute. Just imagine how amazing it would be to a dolphin if we humans could jump as high out of the water as them. They'd lose their minds over it. I can't make it through one playthrough now without stopping here to play with the dolphins for at least 5 minutes. It's always such a special moment for me. This is just another little adventure in a game already full of special moments. This game is so fun, even something as dull and played out on paper as an ice level feels special and new. After I'd had enough exploring, I went to the bottom of the abyss to find Lee and entered the body. I gotta say, this final level is awesome. It's probably the best sort of final stage that could have been conceived for a game like this. And you didn't mishear anything before. This area is literally called the body, and it fits. The body of what exactly? I don't know. Right off the bat, the visuals are even bleaker than that fleshy cathedral. It's nothing like I'd imagined the game would turn out when I first began playing, which is always a good thing in my book. It feels sort of like if you asked a small child to quickly scribble down what they'd imagine the inside of a bloodstream might look like, and before they can finish it, you grab it and hand it over to H.R. Geiger so he can add his own personal touch to it. It's exactly as demented as it sounds. Everything's sort of robotic, but not really. And there's giant red and white blood cells flowing along the currents. There's big, sad-looking faces embedded in the walls, lots of alien tumor-like growths, parasites that hang from the walls, immunities that poison you, the kind of stuff that seems beyond our mortal understanding. There's also this great music that's eerie, but slow and calming, and keeps you focused in an increasingly dire situation. They throw several new enemy types at you the further you go in. Every corner has some fresh new hell waiting behind it. It builds and builds until your heart is racing. A few of these enemies aren't really new, though. They appeared in Nigel's vision way at the beginning, and I don't think you could beat any of them at the time. You can now, but that doesn't make them less scary. These last few areas give you lots of rare items to restore your health, and a few ingredients to make a few more of your own, but I didn't even use any of them until I reached the final boss. I was so focused that after one silly death a little ways in, I managed to make it through the entire first 3 areas, and free all 4 of these trapped spirits of some of the seemingly extinct races we've seen in Visions in one go. The spirits help you free leave from this hard prison thing, and you unlock the Dwal form, your final transformation. The Dwal form merges Nigel and Lee together, sort of. You can switch between each dominant side to perform a different attack. Lee gets a simple spread attack that isn't quite as handy as the energy form's homing shots, but it's really strong, enough to take down most enemies with a couple of shots, or even one if they get caught in the middle of its spread. Killing 3 enemies will enable Nigel's half of the Dwal form to unleash a powerful screen nuke via a scream attack, so just do the spinny thing to switch forms when you're ready and let her rip. It might sound a little roundabout and overcomplicated for its own good, but it's not. It's actually pretty smart, especially when you get to this next area, which mostly seems built around this new playstyle, and it's a gauntlet. This board is just one long twisty tunnel leading to the final boss. They throw a ton of enemies at you in places where you're clearly supposed to use a screen nuke, but they also space these bits apart with smaller, more manageable groups of enemies to get you prepped for the next big push. It's just the right length too, long enough for them to keep escalating until they've thrown everything at you, including strange mutated Niger clones near the end of the stretch. Then you find one last memory crystal, one last fast travel turtle, and a couple last minute goodies to replenish your health. I had 7 arcane whatsits by this point, so that's like 7 extra lives, and I needed every one of them. The final boss is something else. The creator of Aquaria, the god of this game, has not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, more like 5 or 6 phases. It's nuts. The first phase is really easy. He doesn't even move. You just whoosh around to avoid his attacks and hit what you can. The second phase is a bit more tense, as he captures Lee again and starts draining your health with this void where his face should be. I had to refill my health once or twice here, though I'd recommend using strength boost to end the fight faster and save you some health. Then you have to chase this freaky crustacean form deeper into the body until you're in total darkness, and you have to use a sun form or another light source to spot him, then hit him a few times with the energy form until he scurries even deeper into the body. Even this far into the game, it was still surprising me. I had no idea what was coming next, but when I saw it, I began to catch on that this god of the sea wasn't all he appeared to be. Also, I'm pretty sure he inherited Lee's mohawk after absorbing him, though I don't think it has any significance beyond that. Now he was using the verse itself to play his own music and summon energy balls to hit me. The only way to make them disappear and to hurt him is by using the verse to make your own notes to destroy the energy balls. Sometimes doing this will drain his health, sometimes it won't. I'm not sure what the rules are here, but it's the easiest phase, I think. Then the final phase. This is where I got lost and had to look up how to beat it. You've got to hit this eye patch until the eyeball thing underneath is exposed. And, that's simple enough. That's not where I got stuck. But then, get this. You have to use a sun form's fully charged light burst to temporarily make it vulnerable and hit it with other attacks. Then, once you've damaged it enough, you have to return to your normal form and use one of your first spells to pull the eye clean off. You have to do all of this while avoiding his attacks and other enemies he conjures up, and by then I'd used up most of my spare health. After this, you free Lee and get the dwarf form back. The fight changes again, and it's far from over, but the rest of it is pretty simple, and I didn't need any more help from here. Now you just wait for the creature in the stomach to reveal the god baby's face, which will fire this huge laser beam, hit him just before he does, and get out of the way because that won't stop him. Each time you do this, he'll spawn some enemies, which you then have to kill with your own blast before they get caught in this god's friendly fire to ready Nija's scream. Once you've destroyed enough, just wait for the face to appear again and hit it with everything you've got. You have to do this part 3 times, and just like that, you defeat God. Yay! I guess. By the time I made it to the end, I was beat. It was after midnight then. Not a good idea since I was already feeling sick at the time, and I didn't wake up until 10 AM the next day. But hey, I'd already spent pretty much the whole day playing, and I was so close to the end of the game, I figured I may as well just beat the whole thing then and let my life return to normalcy the day after. Still not the smartest idea in hindsight. The final boss alone took me like 40 minutes, probably more, and that was all in one try. With nothing else to do, I sat back and enjoyed the cutscenes that remained. We see the spirits we freed from the creator's collection return to the waking world, and depending on how you look at it, they may spend the rest of their lives alone as the endling of their respective race, but it looks like maybe they'll find a way to bring their people back from the void. We see Nija settle down with Lee in her big awesome house, and it turns out humans and merfolk are biologically compatible, and they have a kid together. That's nice. I think this shot is kinda funny. That egg is something I collected on the way, but this shot makes it look like Nija laid it herself. We also get to see a bunch of concepts during the credits. It's neat to see all the different ways Nija, the other creatures, and Aquaria could have turned out. A couple of these pieces kinda freaked me out though. They look sorta like something I would have drawn 3 or 4 years ago. It all seems like the perfect way to wrap up this game, as we close with a shot of Nija sitting in a spot very similar to where we started this journey, and although she's very happy with her family and wouldn't give them up for the world, there's always going to be that small part of her that still yearns to go on another adventure. The one she's had has changed her forever. It's understandable really. This is just how these sorts of adventures end a lot of the time. Once a hero's journey is finished, what's there left to do? Well, that's where things take a turn for the worst. One thing I'll give this game is that it isn't unreasonable like a lot of these games tend to be when it comes to unlocking a special ending. I figured I'd have to collect everything there is to find in the game world. Every power-up, every treasure, every recipe, every pet, but nope, turns out you only have to find 3 special places that aren't even out of the way to unlock the secret ending. These places set off memories from Nija's childhood. The first one is really easy. The odds are you're gonna find it without trying. The second is a little more out there, literally, but it's in a part of its level that you'll be so curious about once you've seen what's left of the map to explore, you'll probably go looking for it anyway. You'll just need to get good at wall jumping to reach it. Wall jumping in a swimming game. The third one takes the most work to find, but once you get going, it's a pretty straightforward series of steps. All I'll say about this one is while the spirit and fish forms are pretty optional as far as the rest of the game is concerned, you'll need the spirit form to even start looking for this one. As you've probably guessed, yes, I did it, even on my first playthrough. Now, we dive deeper. I'd assumed I'd already gotten the extra cutscene when it's revealed to us that the creator of Aquaria is that human kid who fell from the sky at the beginning. I'm not kidding. As a mortal boy, he was fascinated by the ocean and probably had dreams about living in it, imagining all sorts of creatures that would be his friends. The memory crystals, at least the red ones, are remnants of space rocks that became embedded in the ocean floor, smashing through his home on the way down. When the boy fell, and most likely drowned, instead of passing on, his soul remained in the deep. The memory crystals resonated with his spirit, giving him his godly might in creating Aquaria from the images in his head. Aquaria is just another painting to him, is an escapist fantasy given shape and life by the otherworldly power he was given by these stellar objects. It's implied that he was bullied as a kid, so it's not hard to see why he hates the surface world, and even humanity, for being reminders of the life he lost and whatever he'd been through up there. He's far removed from his former self, consumed by this power. We also learn that the verse we've heard so much about, this mysterious spiritual power that connects everything in Aquaria, this melody we hear in so many songs throughout the game that seems to permeate this entire world, is actually just a particularly catchy part of a song that his mother used to sing to him when he was mortal. Everything in Aquaria sprang forth from his mind, inspired by the verse. The verse is everything, it rings through everything, because the verse is the only part of the song that he still remembers. He can't even recall the chorus.
So beautiful. I could never remember the chorus. Only the verse. It haunted me.
That's deep. Like, that's how Eru and the Ainur sang the world into being in the Silmarillion. The kid even tried to bring his parents back to life with his new might, but they ended up being a ghoul and a monster. I think this ghost kid who follows you out of the city and opens the entrance to the body may actually be that little boy, or some fragment of him, like that's the last part of him that's still remotely human, and it sort of became its own thing, seeking some sort of redemption or cleansing through you. After his defeat, he asks Nija to sing him to sleep like his mother would, before finally departing the world forever. Interestingly, Aquaria isn't destroyed by his absence. Anyway, I thought that's all there was to it, but nope. After the credits, the game kept going. I thought, oh no, now what? Please don't let there be another boss. I'm already winded as is. But nope, you just swim around this creepy, spiral-shaped ruin. There are hazards here, so by no means are you safe from getting hurt or killed even now. I don't know if dying here sends you to your last save point before the final boss, but I don't want to find out. The complete absence of music here sure doesn't fill me with confidence. Then we see Nija's mom, Mia. Yeah, that shadowy figure that approached us at the game's beginning and several times since and unlocked Nija's latent powers was her mother the whole time. You know, maybe this game's ending just got better. I'm happy Nija got to see her mother again. Maybe this is one of those deals where she says, I have to go now, but always remember that I'm proud of you and I'm thinking of you, and greater things will come your way. Stuff like that, you know, it's that kind of scene. Right? Isn't it? No. It turns out Mia's a monster. She was the godchild's finest creation, possibly even another of his attempts to recreate his own mother. She rejected him then, wandering off to live life like a mortal and have Nija. Good for her. But then she turns around and dismisses Nija's family as trivial and not worth caring about, urging her to go to the surface with her and wage war on humanity, who she's come to view as soulless and not really people like the Aquarians. She's the last great thing the creator ever made, his masterpiece, and it's because she left him that he's been trying to fill the void by remaking the world as his new masterpiece and enslave Nija. I guess it shouldn't surprise anyone that Mia shares his disdain for humans, and it's implied that she's a godlike being in her own right, and she's seen things, like her view of the world is too big for the simpler things in life like family and happiness to mean anything anymore, and she seems surprised that abandoning Nija's family would even be a difficult thing for her to do. And yes, if you haven't guessed by now, she's that second spooky laughing voice I mentioned earlier. Chills, man. Anyway, when Nija expresses regret over killing God, who was a kid, and refuses to go with me on this stupid crusade, the witch puts her daughter under a spell and erases her memory, just like she did before the game started, to inspire this wanderlust in her that made us play the game. Then, as if that didn't suck enough, we suddenly jump cut to years later. And I don't mean like 2 or 3 years later, no, I mean we skip so far ahead that Nija's son Lucen is now all grown up, a fully adult human merfolk mix who grew up without his mother after we just spent the whole game playing as her. But hey, he has a girlfriend now, so I guess he's adjusted well enough, if that's any indication. Still, what the hell? So after everything Nija went through, she gets her memories wiped and doesn't realize that she beat God in a fight and has a child somewhere, and a husband who... Oh jeez, just think about poor Lee. He went on this adventure too, and he lost his wife. We don't even see him in the secret ending, so for all we know, he probably lost the powers that Nija gave him and drowned, making their son an orphan. Or maybe he caught on that Nija went missing and realized something wasn't right, so at best he probably left to go look for her on the surface once her son was old enough to look after himself, and told Lucen he'd find his mother and bring her back someday. The only reason the kid even knows any of this now is because he watched everything we just experienced in a memory crystal that looks like the other ones, only it's blue for some reason. Just like the ones those spirits were trapped in. And the one Nija's trapped in on the title screen. Here's where things get strange though. Remember when I said Nija was talking to someone else in the opening? I think she might be talking to him, as he watches her recorded memories she was able to jump in the crystal before her mother got her. Then again, seeing how those final moments were also stored in the crystal, maybe Nija's talking not to us, but through us. And it's not her memories Lucen is peering into. It could very well be our memory of her memory. Because we were there to witness and observe her entire adventure as it played out. We saw everything she did, and we didn't forget. We remembered for her. So yeah, after he sees what happened to his mom, possibly through our eyes, he takes to the surface and flies away to find the mother he never knew. Who knows where she is now though? It's been so many years, not just in the game's story, but since Aquaria's release. This game came out a decade ago, and there's no sign of a sequel in sight. Well, that's only half true. Like I said last time, while the game got great reviews and has a pretty dedicated fanbase, it's still a pretty small fanbase, and it's sold poorly enough that the creators didn't feel a sequel was justified, and they don't even want to make a sequel now. BitBlock Games has disbanded, like Lab Zero was going to if Indivisible's Indiegogo campaign failed. At first this ending pissed me off, like, geez, what a great reward for beating the game, huh? Just reach to the screen and rip my heart out while you're at it. It also makes what was a beautiful title screen especially heart-wrenching, as it seems to symbolize the futility of Nija's struggle for freedom, as it was always going to be in vain, that she will forever be a slave to something, be it at the bottom of this haunted ocean, or in some other prison, a prisoner of her god, a prisoner of her mother, a slave to our whims during gameplay. Aquaria is a tragedy through and through. One of the creators said he wanted to tell us that there are no happy endings, no happily ever afters in this short-lived high tide we call life. Just afters. Yeah, he's one of those guys. But I can't even respect this ending on that level since it says to be continued and was clearly supposed to go other places in a sequel, but it didn't. You shouldn't have such a huge sequel hook that destroys everything unless you're pretty darn sure there is going to be a sequel. From the looks of it though, there kind of is. Apparently someone is using Aquaria's modding feature to continue the story. And I don't just mean it's a side story that picks up after the first game with a new cast or whatever. No, I mean it continues the game story as best as it can. I don't know how much we're going to see of the surface world or how long it'll be before we see Nyjah again, but from the looks of it, Nyjah does learn to walk on land, and Lucen and his father are going to have a pretty big role to play, so we should see the three reunited at some point. There's new forms, new powers, new playable characters, a ton of new assets, and the world map being developed already looks pretty darn big. The creator of this mod, Faust, who may or may not have been a member of the original team, I didn't think to ask, has finished and recently released the first chapter of this sequel, is currently working on a second chapter and has at least 2 more on the way after that. So fingers crossed, it may be at least as big as the first game was completed. I don't want to put too much on his plate though, I just want to see the story go somewhere. You know, just that this is happening at all is amazing to me. I don't know how many of the ideas originally planned for the story's continuation are going to make it into the sequel mod. In fact, I hear the original creators sort of lost their way and had no idea what to do next, but Faust and whoever he's working with have saved this from becoming one of my more fatalistic reviews. To play the sequel mod, you'll need to download the open source file onto a copy of the game and rewrite some of the programming. I've already done this, but it was completely new territory for me, and I didn't want to mess up my Steam copy by screwing something up and losing privileges and not be able to play it again, so I went to the makers of Aquaria and bought a second copy from their website, BitBlot Forums. That's just me. I've never done anything like this before now, especially not for a review. So here goes nothing. Tune in next time for part 3, where we look at Aquaria, the sequel mod, chapter 1. This vid shouldn't take too long to make, since the mod at this time is pretty short. I don't think anyone has reviewed this yet, or even made a let's play of it, so we're diving into uncharted waters here. It's pretty exciting. Okay, so closing thoughts on Aquaria proper. Like I said last time, Aquaria is a pretty good deal. The game took me 18 hours or so to beat on my first go. It's a big game. So when you add mod support and the promise of future stories on top of that, $10 for this game is insane. It's getting more valuable all the time. I can't believe I didn't play this sooner. You know, maybe it was later adopters like me who killed any possibility of a direct sequel being made officially, but at least the creators can rest assured that there are people like me still enjoying their game to this day. If you've missed out, now is a good time to jump into Aquaria, and it's only going to get better from here. The only gaming injustice I can think of now is, well, I was going to rant a lot more about the whole lack of a sequel thing, as entitled as it sounds, but that's being covered, so I guess it's just the fact that such a good game was so overlooked by so many people for so long. Aquaria was such a unique experience for me, through and through. It's become very special to me, like Metroid Prime or Sonic 3K. It's a Metroidvania like none I've ever seen, and I don't think any other game has compelled me to smile so many times on my first playthrough of it in ages. So yeah, it's a good game. Pick it up if you want to have fun in the water. Rest assured, while I may have spoiled the story in this video, what I've showed you is still just a tiny fraction of the world there is to enjoy in this gem. Go check it out if you enjoy the ocean and fantasy water worlds half as much as I do and have $10 to spare. Toodles for now, peeps. See you in part 3. Thanks for watching.